At 63, I walked into my bank and discovered I had ceased to exist. Every account was frozen. Every legal document vanished. All authorized by the son I raised with blood and tears. He thought he had buried me under a mountain of paperwork to control me. But he missed one detail. He missed the faint, terrifying smile on his wife's face. A smile that told me his perfect plan was about to become his worst nightmare. My name is Eleanor Pierce, and on a Tuesday morning that felt just like any other, I walked into the First National Bank of Silver Ridge to pay my electric bill and discovered I was no longer a person. The air conditioning was humming too loud, a low drone that seemed to vibrate against my temples. I stood at the counter, my handbag clutched tight against my stomach, watching the young teller's face go pale. She typed something, frowned, and typed again. When she finally looked up, her eyes did not meet mine. They darted over my shoulder as if looking for someone else. "Mrs. Pierce," she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "I can't process this withdrawal. Your accounts have been frozen." "Frozen? That is ridiculous. I have over $2,000 in checking." "It is not insufficient funds," she said, sliding a printed notice across the marble counter. "The account status has changed. Access is restricted to the legal guardian on file." The world tilted on its axis. "Guardian, I am 63 years old. I do not need a guardian." "The court order came through yesterday afternoon," she continued, her voice trembling slightly. "It names Mr. Adrian Pierce as your conservator due to incapacitated status." Adrian, my Adrian. The boy I had carried on my hip. The man I had helped with a down payment on his first house. My hands started to shake, a violent tremor I could not control. I reached for my wallet, needing to show her my ID, to prove I was Eleanor Pierce, a woman who had worked for 40 years and paid her taxes on time. I flipped it open. Empty. My driver's license was gone. My Medicare card was gone. Even the laminated card with my emergency contacts was missing. I patted my coat pockets, panic rising like bile in my throat. I had thought I was just becoming forgetful lately, misplacing things around the house. Now I knew. My house had been raided while I slept. My phone buzzed in my pocket. The screen flashed Adrian. I answered, my fingers fumbling over the glass. "What have you done?" I hissed, though my voice sounded small in the high-ceilinged lobby. "Mum." Adrian's voice was smooth, terrifyingly calm. "Please don't make a scene. The bank manager called me. You are confusing people." "I am not confused. You froze my money. You took my license." "I am protecting you," he said. "The court agreed that you are not. Well, do not worry. Mom, from now on, I will handle everything. You just need to rest and listen to me." People were staring. The line of customers behind me shifted uncomfortably. I could feel their pity physically, like a heavy wool blanket thrown over my head. They saw a confused old woman shouting into a phone. They did not see the betrayal slicing through me. I ended the call, my chest heaving. The memory hit me hard. 3 months ago. The kitchen table. Adrian sliding a document toward me, smiling that boyish smile that always melted my defenses. "It is just a medical proxy. Mum. In case you fall or something happens at the hospital. Just standard stuff." I had not found my reading glasses. I had trusted him. I had signed my life away between sips of lukewarm tea. The teller leaned forward again. She looked genuinely pained, Mrs. Pierce, she murmured, so low I barely heard her. Your case is unusual. The file includes a psychological evaluation stating severe cognitive decline, but you seem. She stopped herself, perhaps realizing she was speaking out of turn. You remember your account number perfectly. I stumbled out into the blinding Colorado sunlight. A silver sedan pulled up to the curb before I could even orient myself. Adrian got out. He was wearing his expensive navy suit, the one I had bought him for his first big interview at the firm. He did not look like a villain. He looked like my son. He walked over, his face a mask of concern for anyone watching, and placed a hand firmly on my back. It was not a hug. It was a steer. "Let us get you home," he said loud enough for passers-by to hear. "You have had a big day." I tried to pull away, but his grip tightened just enough to hurt. He guided me into the passenger seat like I was fragile glass. As he got into the driver's side, he placed a thick, heavy manila folder into my lap. "I need you to sign a few more things, Mom," he said, turning the ignition. "Just to finalize the transition. It is for your own good." I looked out the window as we pulled up to his driveway. Lila, my daughter-in-law, was standing on the porch. She was wiping her hands on a dish towel, her face unreadable. She watched Adrian herd me toward the steps like valuable livestock. Our eyes locked. I expected pity. I expected her to look away. Instead, the corner of her mouth lifted. It was not a happy smile. It was a smile of recognition, or perhaps resignation. It was a smile that said she saw the knife in my back because she was holding one of her own. I was not born a victim. I was born in Millstone, a town coated in enough coal dust to turn the morning dew grey before the sun even rose. Before I was a mother, and long before I was a liability on a court document. I was a girl who smelled of turpentine and linseed oil. I wanted to paint landscapes, big sweeping canvases of the Rockies. But dreams do not put bread on the table in a miner's house. So, I put down the brushes and picked up a typewriter. I became a secretary at Harborline Mutual, typing policy numbers until my fingers cramped, trading my colours for the steady grey of a paycheck. Then came Frank. He was a firefighter with hands rough enough to strike a match on and a heart soft enough to cry when our daughter was born still. We buried her under a small oak tree, and all that grief, all that unspent love, funneled into the one thing we had left Adrian. When Frank died in a warehouse fire when Adrian was just 14, the world ended, but the bookkeeping did not. I received a settlement check and a survivor's pension. It was enough to live comfortably, but I did not touch a cent of it for myself. That money was holy. It was Adrian's future. For the next decade, I ceased to be Eleanor Pierce and became simply Adrian's mother. By day, I filed claims at Harborline. By night, I did the books for a grocery store on 4th Street, squinting under fluorescent lights until my eyes burned. I did it so Adrian could attend the private academy across town. I did it so he could wear the right sneakers and go to the basketball camps where the wealthy fathers cheered. I remember one evening when he was 16. He threw his backpack on the table, looking at the macaroni and cheese I had made. "Mom, everyone else is going to the ski trip in Aspen," he said, not asking, but demanding. "I need $400 by Friday. Adrian, honey, we just paid for the braces. I don't think I can squeeze it out this month." He rolled his eyes, a gesture that cut deeper than he knew. "You always say that." Do you want me to be the only loser staying home? Dad would have let me go. He knew exactly where to twist the knife. So, I took an extra shift. I skipped my own dental appointment. He went to Aspen. When he got into a finance program at the university, I was so proud I felt like my chest would burst. To pay his tuition without touching the principal of Frank's insurance money. I stopped going to physical therapy for my bad hip. I looked my doctor in the eye and lied. I am feeling much better, I told him, even as pain radiated down my leg. I think I can manage with just aspirin now. It was worth it. Or so I told myself every time I limped up the stairs. Then came Lila. Adrian brought her home for dinner a year after he graduated. She was a nurse, a quiet woman with dark, intelligent eyes and hands that looked capable of healing. She was kind to me, asking about my old sketches on the wall, but Adrian seemed almost embarrassed by her. Lila has these big ideas about becoming a nurse practitioner, Adrian said, cutting her off as she spoke about her classes. She is just too ambitious. She doesn't understand that a woman should focus on the home first. I just want to help people. Adrian, Lila said softly, looking down at her plate. You help people by supporting me. He laughed, but his eyes were cold. I should have seen the warning signs then. But when they married and moved 3 streets away, promising to look after me, I let my guard down. I was getting older. My hip was worse. I started showing Adrian where I kept the important papers. I showed him the deed to the house, the bonds, the savings account numbers. I thought I was building a safety net. I did not realize I was handing him the blueprints to my destruction. The beginning of the end happened on a Sunday afternoon in my kitchen. We were drinking coffee. Adrian reached over to the counter where my heavy iron keyring lay. He unhooked the small brass key to the floor safe, the one I kept hidden behind the pantry. What are you doing? I asked, pausing with my cup halfway to my mouth. He slipped the key into his pocket, his movement casual, practiced. Mom, honestly, you left the stove on last week. You are losing track of things, he said, chuckling as if it were a shared joke. You should let me keep this for safety. You know, before you lose it. I didn't leave the stove on. Adrian? I was simmering soup. See, you don't even remember, he said, patting my hand. Don't worry. I'll take care of it. I laughed nervously. I let him take it. I told myself he was being a good son. I did not know that key was the first brick in the wall he was building around me. A prison made of my own trust. The office of Mason Grady smelled of lemon polish and old dust, a scent that I would come to associate with the suffocation of my civil rights. Adrian sat beside me in a leather chair that squeaked every time he shifted his weight, while Mr. Grady, a man with a shiny forehead and a smile that did not reach his eyes, pushed a stack of documents across the mahogany desk. They were thick, bound with heavy staples, dense with legal jargon that swam before my eyes. It is just a comprehensive estate plan. Mrs. Pierce, Mason said, his voice smooth like oil. Adrian wants to ensure your golden years are comfortable. This simply consolidates the medical proxy and financial oversight we discussed. I don't understand why there are so many pages, I said, reaching for my reading glasses, but my hand trembled. It is just standard language. Mom, Adrian interjected, placing a hand over mine to stop me from turning the page. We talked about this. You said you didn't want to worry about bills anymore. This lets me handle the stress. I signed. I signed because I was tired, and because I had been raised to trust men in suits who spoke with authority. I did not know then that I was signing a voluntary petition for conservatorship. I did not know that the medical evidence attached to Exhibit B came from a 15-minute appointment I had 2 months ago. I remembered it now, a strange doctor Adrian had taken me to, claiming it was a requirement for a new insurance policy. The man had asked me to count backward from 100 by sevens. I had stumbled once because I was nervous. Now, that stumble was cited as severe cognitive impairment and disorientation. When we finally left, I insisted on going home. I needed to see my own things. I went straight to the metal filing cabinet in the corner of my bedroom, the one Frank had bought 30 years ago. I pulled the drawer open. It screeched on its tracks, a sound that usually comforted me, but today it echoed in a hollow room. Empty. The hanging folders were there, but the contents were gutted. The deed to the house on Elm Street was gone. My birth certificate was gone. The original copy of Frank's will was gone. All that remained were expired coupons and instruction manuals for appliances we had thrown away 10 years ago. Panic, cold and sharp, seized my chest. I grabbed the landline and dialed the number for Harborline Mutual, my old employer. I needed a copy of my policy. I am sorry. Mrs. Pierce, the young woman on the line said, after verifying my social security number. We processed the change of address request last month. The duplicate policy was mailed to the P.O. box on record, authorized by your power of attorney. I never authorized a P.O. box, I shouted, but the line just clicked. 2 days later. Adrian stood in my living room, looking at the ceiling with exaggerated concern. The wiring in this place is a fire hazard. Mom, he said, shaking his head. And these stairs. I cannot sleep at night worrying you will fall. I found a place, just for a little while, until we get the house fixed up. He called it Maple Haven Residence. It sounded like a resort. It was a holding cell with floral wallpaper. Within a week, I was installed in room 304. It smelled of industrial cleaner and boiled cabbage. The staff spoke to me in that high-pitched, sing-song voice people reserve for toddlers and the very old. When I went to the front desk to ask for $10 of my own money to buy toiletries, the receptionist smiled pityingly. "Oh, Eleanor, sweetie," she said. "Mr. Pierce manages your allowance. You have to ask him for authorization for cash withdrawals." I walked back to my room, my face burning with a humiliation so deep it felt like a physical bruise. I sat on the edge of the twin bed, staring at the beige wall, realizing I was no longer an adult. I was an inventory item. That night, a soft knock came at my door. It was late, past visiting hours. Lila slipped inside, looking over her shoulder before closing the door softly. She was wearing a heavy coat, and she smelled of the cold night air and roasted chicken. She set a Tupperware container on the nightstand. "I made the pot roast you like," she whispered. Then, she reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a cheap, prepaid flip phone. She pressed it into my hand, her fingers cold. "Keep this hidden," she said, her voice barely audible. "Do not let the nurses see it, and do not let Adrian see it." "Lila, what is happening?" I asked, gripping her hand. "Why is he doing this?" "He does not want anyone calling you without him knowing," she said, her eyes dark and frightened. He is telling everyone you are too sick to handle the phone." She left as quickly as she came. I sat there in the dark, clutching the plastic phone like it was a lifeline thrown into a stormy sea. The red light on the smoke detector blinked above me. A rhythmic, unfeeling eye. My son controlled my money. He controlled my home. He controlled my name. And as I sat in the silence of room 304, a terrifying question bloomed in the darkness. If he could erase me on paper, what would stop him from erasing me completely? I waited until the night shift nurse, a heavy-footed woman named Brenda, had finished her rounds before I pulled the prepaid phone from beneath my mattress. I dialed Nora. We had worked side by side at Harborline Mutual for 20 years, and if anyone knew how to navigate the labyrinth of bureaucracy, it was her. Now working as a paralegal, she had access to databases that were closed to the public. Eleanor. Nora's voice crackled on the line, low and urgent. I found the petition. I am sending a picture to that phone right now. You need to see this. The screen lit up with a grainy scan of a court document. It was a voluntary petition for guardian appointment. My eyes went straight to the bottom of the page. There, in blue ink, was my name. Eleanor Marie Pierce. But the loop on the P was too wide, and the slant was leaning backward, not forward. Then I saw the date next to it, February 14th. That is impossible, I whispered, my thumb hovering over the date. February 14th. I was in the hospital with pneumonia. I was on a ventilator. I could barely breathe, let alone sign a legal document. Exactly, Nora said. He forged it, Eleanor. And he did a sloppy job if you know where to look. The next evening, Lila came again. This time, she looked even more haggard, her eyes rimmed with red. She sat on the edge of the bed and pulled a small silver USB drive from her pocket, pressing it into my palm like it was a grenade. You need to hide this, Lila said, her voice trembling. I thought I was going crazy. Mom? Adrian has been locking his office door. He brings home these thick envelopes from the bank, and twice now. I have seen him burning papers in the barbecue pit in the backyard. He thinks he is being careful. Burning papers. Yes. And he deleted the cloud storage for the home security cameras. He told me it was a glitch. But I had already backed up the last month to an external drive because I didn't trust him. She pulled out her own tablet and plugged the USB in. Watch. The video was black and white, stamped with a date from 3 months ago. It showed Adrian sitting at my old mahogany desk in my living room. He had a sheet of tracing paper over a document. He would sign, stop, crumble the paper, and throw it on the floor. Then he would sign again. He did it over and over, practicing my name with the dedication of a craftsman perfecting a murder weapon. I felt a coldness spread through my chest that had nothing to do with the drafty room. This was not a son trying to manage a senile mother. This was a predator stalking prey. There is more, Lila said, and I could hear the nausea in her voice. I heard him on the phone yesterday. He was shouting at someone about a collateral valuation. He said, the house is free and clear. Just push the mortgage through. Eleanor, he is taking a loan out against your house. He can't, I said, though I knew he could. I never agreed to that. He does not need you to agree, Lila said. She looked down at her hands. I found a bank statement for an account I didn't know existed. It is in his name, but the deposits are huge. They are labeled consulting fees. They come from other people. Mom. Other elderly people. My blood ran cold. What do you mean? I saw an email he thought he deleted, she whispered. It was from a woman named Mrs. Galloway. She was begging him. She wrote, "Please, Adrian, I need that money for my insulin." He deleted it. And then he took us out to dinner at that expensive steakhouse. The image of my son, the boy who used to cry when he found a hurt bird, erasing an old woman's plea for medicine, shattered whatever maternal delusion I had left. He was not just stealing my life. He was a wolf in a suit, feeding on the weak. I closed my hand around the cold metal of the USB drive. I looked at Lila. She was terrified, waiting for me to crumble. But I did not crumble. I felt a spine of steel stiffen within me, a sensation I had not felt since the day Frank died. "He thinks I am just a confused old woman," I said, my voice steady and hard. "He thinks paperwork is his weapon." "What are we going to do?" Lila asked, wiping a tear from her cheek. "If he uses papers to cage me," I said, looking her dead in the eye, "we will use papers to cage him. I am done being the victim. Lila, call Nora. We are going to war." Nora drove me to a nondescript brick building on the edge of town to meet Victor Alden. He was a man who looked like he slept in his suits, with a tie that was perpetually loosened and eyes that had seen too many children steal from their parents. When I first sat down, he looked at me with a weary skepticism that I knew well. It was the look people gave to old women they suspected were one bad day away from forgetting their own names. "Mrs. Pierce," Victor said, clicking a pen repeatedly. "I have read Nora's notes, but I need to be clear. Contesting a court-appointed guardianship is extremely difficult. If there is any validity to the medical report, any at all." "Mr. Alden," I cut him off, my voice steady. "Do you know the specific indemnity clause for water damage in a standard Harborline mutual homeowners policy from 1998? He blinked, his pen freezing in mid-air. "Excuse me." "Clause 4, Section B," I recited, staring him dead in the eye. "Coverage excludes damage caused by continuous or repeated seepage or leakage of water or steam over a period of weeks, months, or years. Exception granted only if the plumbing system was inspected by a licensed professional within 12 months of the incident." I leaned forward. I typed that clause 3,000 times over 20 years. I remember the birthday of every teller at my bank. I remember that my son was born at 3:18 in the morning. I am not senile. "Mr. Alden, I am being robbed." Victor slowly set his pen down. The skepticism vanished, replaced by a sharp, predatory interest. "Okay, Eleanor, I am listening." Over the next hour, Victor laid out the battlefield. He explained that overturning the order required more than just my word. We needed to prove fraud. We needed to prove the system had been weaponized. "You have to play the part," Victor instructed, his voice low. "If Adrian suspects you have legal counsel, he will move the assets and hide the paper trail. To him, you are still the confused, helpless mother. To us, you are the spy inside the house." "I can do that," I said. "I have been playing the part of the doting mother for 35 years. We got to work. My dining room table became a war room. I asked for a yellow legal pad and a red pen. I did what I had done for decades at the insurance firm. I built a timeline. I wrote down the dates. February 14th. That was the date on the petition Adrian filed. "Impossible," I muttered, drawing a thick red line through it. "I was in the ICU with pneumonia. I was sedated. And look at this," Victor said, sliding a dossier across the table. "Dr. Aris, The psychiatrist who signed your evaluation. He is not just a doctor. He is a golf buddy of Mason Grady, Adrian's lawyer. We pulled his records. He signs 40 of these evaluations a month. He spent 10 minutes with you. Eleanor. 10 minutes to declare you incompetent. He asked me to count backwards, I said, my anger burning cold and focused. He didn't care about my mind. He cared about his fee. We are going to subpoena the bank footage, Nora added, typing furiously on her laptop. And we are going to request the medication logs from Maple Haven to prove you are not taking the dementia blockers they claim you are. Lila, who had been sitting quietly in the corner, spoke up. I will stay in the house. I will keep cooking his dinner and washing his shirts. He talks when he thinks no one is listening. He brags. I looked at my daughter-in-law. She looked tired, but her jaw was set. She was risking her marriage, her home, everything to help me. We need a kill shot, I said, tapping the table. Adrian does not care about the law. He cares about his image. He works for Northbridge Capital Advisors. His entire career is built on managing wealth for retirees. If they find out he is looting his own mother, he is finished. Victor finished for me, a grim smile touching his lips. Corporate liability? They will drop him faster than a hot rock. The plan was set. I returned to Maple Haven that evening. The smell of antiseptic felt different now. It was no longer the smell of a prison, but the smell of a stakeout. When Adrian came to visit an hour later, I was sitting in my armchair, staring blankly at the television. Here, Mum, he said, thrusting a document at me. Just a transfer form for some old stocks. It is better if I manage them. I took the pen. I let my hand shake. I made my signature wobble, just enough to look pathetic, just enough to make him feel powerful. Thank you, Adrian, I whispered, handing the paper back. You are such a good boy to take care of everything. He smiled, that slick, satisfied smile that made my stomach turn. He patted my shoulder and left, thinking he had won another round. He did not know that beneath my wool cardigan, taped right over my heart, was a small digital recorder Lila had bought at an electronics store. The red light was blinking steadily against my skin. He thought he had buried me in paperwork. He forgot that paper is flammable. And I was holding the match. The visits became a ritual of psychological warfare. Adrian would stride into Maple Haven with a bouquet of grocery store carnations, smiling brightly for the nurses at the station. Just checking on my favorite girl, he would announce, his voice booming with false cheer. But the moment the door to room 304 clicked shut, the smile dropped like a stone in water. He did not come to visit. He came to inspect the perimeter. He checked my call log. He checked my bedside drawer. He sat on the edge of the mattress, invading my space, smelling of expensive cologne and desperation. You have been quiet, Mom, he said one Tuesday, his eyes scanning the room. That is good. The doctors say quiet is good for your condition. I just watch the birds. Adrian, I stammered, clutching my cardigan where the recorder hummed against my chest. They are nice. He relaxed, loosening his tie. He was arrogant in his victory. You know, things are finally moving. The bank approved the collateral on the house. It is a big investment. Mum? Huge returns. We are going to be set. The house, I asked, widening my eyes behind my glasses. But Frank paid off the mortgage in 1999. Why do we need a bank? It is leverage, Mom. You wouldn't understand. He scoffed, waving a hand dismissively. It is a bridge loan, $200,000 to secure a position in a tech startup. Once it hits, I pay it back, keep the profit. Simple. I felt a surge of nausea. He was gambling my home, my sanctuary, on a startup. The recorder caught every word. But what if it goes wrong? I asked softly. He leaned in, his face inches from mine. It won't, unless you make it go wrong. And if you do decide to get smart. Mom, well, Colorado isn't the only place with facilities. There is a very quiet center in Nevada, very remote. You wouldn't know a soul there. No Lila, no grandkids, just you and the desert. He let the threat hang in the air, thick and suffocating. I shrank back, letting my lower lip tremble. Inside, I was memorizing the look in his eyes so I could describe it to a jury. 2 days later, he intercepted me in the parking lot as I was returning from a supervised walk. He practically shoved me into the passenger seat of his sedan. "Sign these," he demanded, tossing a clipboard into my lap. "Medical insurance updates. They need them by 5 o'clock. I looked down. The text was small, dense. I saw the words stock transfer and power of attorney. "It is so small. Adrian," I whined, squinting. "My eyes are bad today. Can you read this part? The part about full divestment." He froze. His head snapped toward me. "You can read that?" I think so," I said, retreating instantly. "It looks like the word divestment. Is that a medical term?" He stared at me for a long second, his suspicion a palpable weight in the car. Then he snatched the clipboard back. "It means they are divesting you of liability. Mum, just sign the line." While I was fighting him in the car, Lila was fighting him in our home. She told me later that she had broken into his home office while he was with me. She photographed a printed email lying on his desk. It was from the compliance department at Northbridge Capital Advisors. The subject line was in bold, urgent liability warning. It stated clearly that any involvement in elder abuse litigation would result in immediate termination. But beneath that, she found something worse. An email from a woman named Sarah, someone I did not know, talking about commissions from other elderly clients and a plan to liquidate assets and move to Florida when the heat gets too high. I was not his mother anymore. I was just the last piggy bank he needed to break before he ran. The cruelest blow came on Saturday. Adrian brought the children. Leo and Maya ran into the room, their faces bright and innocent, holding drawings they had made for me. "Grandma!" Leo shouted, hugging my knees. I hugged them back, fiercely, smelling their shampoo, trying to shield them from the toxicity radiating from their father standing in the doorway. We played Go Fish for 20 minutes. For 20 minutes, I was happy. Then, as the kids ran to the window to look at a squirrel, Adrian stepped up behind my chair. He placed a hand on my shoulder, a grip that looked affectionate, but felt like a vice. "Look at them," he whispered, his hot breath against my ear. "They love you, but if you do anything stupid, if you try to fight me, I will tell them the truth. I will tell them Grandma lost her mind. I will tell them you burned down the family finances and tried to hurt us. They will grow up hating you. Mom, I will make sure of it." I went still. He was weaponizing his own children. He was threatening to poison their memories of me. "You wouldn't," I breathed. "Try me," he hissed. That night, alone in my room, I connected the recorder to my phone and played the file for Victor and Nora over a video call. The audio was crisp. Adrian's voice filled the room, confessing to the loan, the threat of Nevada, the threat to turn my grandchildren against me. Victor listened in silence. When the tape ended, he took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. "Eleanor," Victor said, his voice low and serious. "This is no longer just a civil dispute. This is criminal extortion. This is fraud. This is a felony case." I looked at my reflection in the dark window of room 304. I looked old. I looked tired. But for the first time in months, the corners of my mouth lifted. "Good," I said. "Then let us treat him like a criminal." The counterattack did not begin with a shout. It began with the quiet, heavy thud of a date stamp on a stack of legal documents. Victor filed an emergency petition in the neighbouring county court, bypassing the local judges Adrian played golf with. He submitted everything as one undeniable package, the forensic analysis of the forged signature, the video of Adrian practicing my name like a forgery artist, and the audio recording of him threatening to exile me to the Nevada desert. Victor also filed a motion for a temporary restraining order on all my assets, effectively putting a padlock on the bank vault Adrian thought he owned. Then came the escape. It was a beautiful piece of bureaucratic sleight of hand. Adrian had previously signed a blanket authorization allowing Maple Haven to transfer the patient to specialized care facilities at their discretion. We used his own arrogance against him. Victor arranged for my discharge under that very clause. When the facility called Adrian to inform him I had been moved per the terms of his directive, he assumed he had won. He assumed I was being shipped off to some warehouse for the forgotten. He was wrong. I was in a one-bedroom apartment 3 blocks from the courthouse, a rental standing in Nora's name. For the first time in 4 months, I made my own toast. The smell of burning bread was the sweetest perfume I had ever known. I walked to the park down the street without asking for permission. I was no longer an inmate. I was a ghost in the machine. On the living room wall, I used blue painter's tape to hang up copies of every bank statement and email Lila had smuggled out. I drew arrows with a red marker, connecting the withdrawals to Adrian's secret accounts. It looked like a detective's murder board. Only the victim was still alive and holding the marker. The financial trap snapped shut on a Thursday. Victor had timed the asset freeze perfectly to coincide with the due date of Adrian's secret mortgage interest payment. According to Lila, Adrian tried to make the transfer from his phone while eating breakfast. When it declined, he turned purple. He called the bank, screaming about a technical error, only to be told that a court order had flagged the account for suspicious activity regarding elder abuse. Cornered and panicking. He called Lila from his car an hour later. She recorded the call. She must have found a lawyer. Adrian screamed, his voice cracking through the speaker. I did everything right. Lila. I used the papers. I got the power of attorney before she went totally senile. How is she doing this? I don't know, Adrian, Lila said, her voice steady and cool. Maybe you underestimated her. I am going to fix this. He snarled. I just need to find where they moved her. While he was hunting for me, Lila was dismantling his life from the inside. Under Victor's guidance, she began the slow, invisible process of extraction. She moved the children's birth certificates, their immunization records, and her own passport to a safety deposit box in her sister's name. She packed away their favorite toys, one by one, telling Adrian she was just donating old clutter. She was preparing for the nuclear fallout of a divorce. Yet she greeted him at the door every evening with a smile that revealed nothing. The final blow of the week happened at Northbridge Capital. Desperate for cash to cover the loan payment, Adrian went to the Human Resources Department to request a salary advance instead of a check. The HR director invited him into a glass-walled office and slid a single piece of paper across the desk. It was a fax summary of my lawsuit. "We received this from the court this morning, Mr. Pierce," the director said, her face devoid of sympathy. "Our firm has a zero-tolerance policy regarding financial malfeasance, especially involving vulnerable populations. If these allegations of elder abuse are substantiated, you will be placed on the industry blacklist immediately. We are suspending your trading license pending an internal investigation." Adrian walked out of that building, a dead man walking. His face was grey. He dialed my old cell phone number. It went to voicemail. He dialed Maple Haven. They told him they could not disclose my location due to pending litigation. At that exact moment, I was sitting in Nora's kitchenette, sipping a cup of Earl Grey tea that I had brewed myself. The television was on, playing a segment about a new national campaign to stop financial predation on the elderly. I watched the screen, feeling the steam rise against my face. "Perfect timing," I whispered to the empty room. "Just perfect." I saw the destruction of my son's reputation on the 3-inch screen of a smartphone. It was a video clip forwarded by half the neighborhood, recorded by Mrs. Gable, who lived 2 doors down from my old house. The footage was shaky, but the audio was crystal clear. Adrian was standing on my front porch, pounding his fist against the solid oak door, screaming at the bright orange legal seal Victor had pasted there just hours before. "Open this door," Adrian shouted in the video, his face twisted and red. "It is my property. You cannot lock me out." He did not see Mrs. Gable recording from her hydrangea bushes. He did not know that within 3 hours, the video would be captioned, "Local son loses it after suing his own mother," and shared across every community page in Silver Ridge. Victor decided to strike while the iron was hot. He arranged an interview with the Silver Ridge Gazette. I sat in a borrowed blazer in Victor's conference room, my hands folded on the table. I did not call Adrian a monster. I did not weep. I simply told the reporter the facts. "I woke up one day and my documents were gone," I said into the voice recorder. "My signature appeared on papers I never saw, dated on days I was sedated in the hospital. I am not asking for pity. I am asking how a system designed to protect the elderly became a weapon to strip us of our rights." The story ran on Sunday. By Monday morning, public opinion had shifted from curiosity to outrage. Northbridge Capital advisors, terrified of the bad press, acted swiftly. They placed Adrian on indefinite unpaid leave pending an internal investigation. The income he needed to pay the secret mortgage interest on my house evaporated overnight. Desperate and cornered, Adrian stormed into his own home, looking for a scapegoat. He couldn't find me, so he turned on Lila. According to Lila, he tore through the living room, overturning cushions. "Where is she?" he screamed at her. "You know where she is. You have been talking to her." Lila stood in the kitchen, calm and immovable. She told me later that she felt a strange sense of peace, the kind that comes when the bomb finally goes off. "I don't know. Adrian?" She lied, her voice steady. "But screaming won't help. If you want to fix this, we should go to the courthouse. We should settle this legally. Face them." He thought she was being the submissive wife, trying to help him navigate the mess. He agreed, thinking he could still charm or bully his way out of it. He did not know she was leading him into an ambush. The mediation room at the courthouse was cold and smelled of floor wax. It was the first time I had seen Adrian in weeks. He looked thinner, his expensive suit rumpled. When he saw me, he didn't say hello. He turned to the court-appointed mediator. "My mother is paranoid," he said, gesturing at me with a shaking hand. "She is confused. She is being manipulated by this ambulance chaser to ruin me." Victor didn't say a word. He simply connected his laptop to the projector and pressed play. The room went silent as the video from the USB drive flickered onto the white wall. It showed Adrian sitting at my desk, tracing my signature over and over again. Scratch, crumple, throw. The sound of the paper being crushed was the only noise in the room. Adrian went pale. That is out of context," he stammered. "I was just practicing to help her." "We also have this," Victor said, placing a transcript on the table. "An affidavit from Mrs. Galloway, another client of yours. After reading Eleanor's story in the paper, she came forward. She claims you transferred her municipal bonds to your private account without her permission." The air left the room. It was the second blow, the one that turned a family dispute into a pattern of criminal behavior. Adrian looked around wildly, his eyes landing on his wife. "This is a setup," he hissed. "Who gave you that video? It was deleted. Who gave you the recordings?" The chair beside him scraped against the linoleum. Lila stood up. She didn't look at him. She looked at the judge. "I wish to be sworn in," Lila said, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. "I am no longer an anonymous witness. I provided the USB drive. I provided the audio recordings. And I can testify to the location of the missing documents. He hid them in the storage locker behind our garage." Adrian froze. He turned to look at Lila, his mouth opening and closing. The realization hit him with the force of a physical blow. The wife he had ignored, the woman he had dismissed as weak and unambitious, had been dismantling his life piece by piece from the inside. "You," he whispered, the word strangling in his throat. You did this?" Lila finally turned to him. She did not look sad. She did not look afraid. She looked at him with the cool detachment of a stranger. And then, slowly, the corner of her mouth lifted into a smile, cold, thin, and terrifyingly satisfied. It was the smile of a woman who had watched him dig his own grave and had simply handed him the shovel. The hearing to determine my competency felt less like a legal proceeding and more like an autopsy of my dignity. Adrian sat at the plaintiff's table, looking solemn and grieved, while his lawyer, Mason Grady, paraded a series of incident reports from Maple Haven before the judge. "Your Honor," Mason said, waving a sheet of paper. On March 3rd, the ward was unable to identify the day of the week. On March 10th, she became aggressive when a nurse attempted to administer basic care. These are not the actions of a sound mind. Victor stood up slowly. "Your Honor, we have the shift logs from those specific dates. On March 3rd, Mrs. Pierce was administered a dosage of sedatives meant for a patient twice her weight. Of course, she did not know what day it was. She was chemically lobotomized. And the nurse who recorded the error later admitted in a deposition that she was instructed by the facility director to alter the record." Victor handed the deposition to the bailiff. Adrian shifted in his seat, his collar suddenly looking too tight. Next came Dr. Aris, the psychiatrist who had signed my initial evaluation. He sat in the witness box, wiping sweat from his upper lip. "Dr. Aris," Victor asked, leaning on the podium. "How long did your evaluation of Mrs. Pierce last standard duration?" Aris muttered. Standard Victor picked up a billing record. "According to the parking garage timestamp, your car entered the facility at 10:12 in the morning and exited at 10:27, 15 minutes. You diagnosed severe cognitive decline in less time than it takes to boil an egg. Did Mr. Grady offer you a referral fee for this expedited service? I object to the implication," Aris stammered, looking frantically at Mason. I made a professional judgment based on the available data. The data provided by the son who wanted control of her assets. Victor shot back. Mason tried to intervene, blaming clerical errors and typing mistakes for the identical paragraphs found in my report and 3 other guardianship petitions he had filed that year. But Victor flashed a slide on the projector, showing the metadata from the files on the USB drive. They were templates. The only things changed were the names of the victims and the dates. Then, they called Adrian. My son walked to the stand, trying to project the image of a martyr. "I love my mother," Adrian said, looking earnestly at the judge. "I only wanted to keep her safe. She forgets things. She leaves the stove on. She forgets to lock the front door. I was terrified she would wander off and get hurt." "You were worried about her locking the door?" Victor asked, holding up a hardware store invoice. "Yes, absolutely." "Then can you explain why this invoice, dated 2 weeks before the guardianship petition, is for the installation of a double-cylinder deadbolt A-lock that requires a key to open from the inside? You were not trying to keep the world out, Mr. Pierce. You were locking your mother in." Adrian opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Victor pressed a button on his laptop. Adrian's voice, tinny but unmistakable, filled the courtroom. It was the recording from the car. "Once the court confirms she is incompetent, everything will be in my name. We sell that old dilapidated house, move somewhere else, and I don't have to hear her complain anymore." A gasp rippled through the gallery. The judge's expression turned into stone. Lila took the stand next. She did not look at Adrian. She looked at me. "He made me sign the consent forms for the mortgage," she said, her voice trembling but clear. "I told him I didn't want to do it. I told him it was wrong," he said. "He said if I didn't sign, he would tell the court I was an unfit mother. He said he would take the children. He never hurt them physically, but he used them. He used them as leverage to make me quiet." "And the money?" Victor asked, pointing to a large chart on an easel. "Did any of the funds withdrawn from Mrs. Pierce's retirement account go toward her care?" "No," Lila whispered. "He put it into high-risk option trades. He lost $40,000 in 2 weeks. The final blow came from an unexpected source. A representative from Northbridge Capital Advisors asked to approach the bench. He had flown in that morning. "Your Honor," the man said, adjusting his glasses. "As of 9 o'clock this morning, Mr. Pierce's employment has been terminated. Our internal audit revealed a pattern of aggressive churning in the accounts of his elderly clients. We are cooperating fully with the district attorney regarding potential fraud charges." The courtroom went silent. The air felt thin, charged with the electricity of a storm breaking. The judge looked over his spectacles at Adrian. "Mr. Pierce, the evidence presented here is not just disturbing. It is damning. I am issuing an immediate order suspending your guardianship. All legal rights and decision-making powers are restored to Mrs. Eleanor Pierce, effective this second. Furthermore, I am referring this entire transcript to the Criminal Division for immediate review regarding charges of elder abuse, forgery, and grand larceny. I watched Adrian standing alone in the center of the room. He looked at his lawyer, who was busy packing his briefcase. He looked at the Northbridge rep, who refused to make eye contact. Finally, he looked at me. He opened his mouth as if to say, "Mom," but the word died on his lips. He realized, finally, that the game was over. The paperwork he had used to build his cage had just become the bars of his own prison. The aftermath was swift and brutal, not unlike the winter storms that roll off the Rockies. The district attorney did not just slap Adrian on the wrist. They threw the entire penal code at him. He was indicted on multiple counts of elder abuse, second-degree forgery, and mortgage fraud. Because the court ruled that I had never signed the mortgage documents of my own free will, the lien on my house was declared void. The bank had to eat the loss. I did not move back into the house immediately. Instead, I hired a contractor. I had the walls knocked down and the dark hallways opened up. Victor drafted a new ownership agreement. It was a complex trust, placing the property in the names of both myself and Lila, protected by an ironclad clause that prevented any future sale without the consent of an independent trustee. Lila filed for divorce 2 days after the criminal charges were filed. It was not a battle. It was a surrender. She presented the court with the transcript of Adrian threatening to weaponize the children against me. The judge, a stern woman with no patience for bullies, granted Lila full physical custody. She noted in her ruling that Adrian displayed a disturbing pattern of manipulative control and financial predation. Then came the sentencing. Adrian stood before the bench, stripped of his expensive suit and his arrogance. He received 5 years of probation combined with 6 months in a county detention center. But the real punishment was professional death. He was permanently barred from holding a securities license or working in the financial sector. He was ordered to pay restitution money I knew I would never see, as he was now unemployable and bankrupt. I saw him one last time in the hallway outside the courtroom. He looked grey, like a man whose soul had been sucked out. He saw me and rushed forward, only to be stopped by the bailiff. "Mom, please," he begged, his voice cracking. "You have to help me. I can't go to jail. This isn't fair. It was the system. The system made it too easy. It is not my fault." I looked at him. I looked for the toddler I had nursed, the boy I had cheered for at basketball games. He was gone. All that was left was a man who believed he was the victim of his own crime. I did not yell. I did not cry. I adjusted my handbag and looked him in the eye. "You hid my documents to control me, Adrian," I said, my voice calm and final. "I simply used those same documents to put you exactly where you belong. From this moment on, my life is no longer in your hands." I turned my back on him and walked out into the sunlight. 6 months have passed. Nora, Victor, and I started a small legal clinic in the back of a community center. We help seniors organize their estate plans to prevent exactly what happened to me. I speak at seminars now. I tell my story not as a tragedy, but as a warning. My house is alive again. We converted it into a 2-family home. I live on the ground floor, and Lila and the children have the renovated upstairs. I hear the pitter-patter of Leo and Maya's feet above my head, and it sounds like a heartbeat. They do not know why their father is away. They just know that Grandma and Mom are happy and that the house feels safe. Yesterday afternoon, Victor came by for tea. We sat at the new oak dining table. He spread out a fresh stack of documents. These were not hidden papers. These were a new will, a revocable living trust, and a directive naming a professional fiduciary as my future guardian, should I ever actually need one. Ready to sign? Eleanor, Victor asked. I am, I said. I picked up the pen. My hand was steady. I signed my name, Eleanor Marie Pierce, with a flourish. When I looked up, Lila was standing in the doorway holding a tray of cookies. She was watching me. On her lips was that same smile I had seen months ago. But the mystery was gone. It was no longer the smile of a woman hiding a secret. It was the smile of a survivor who knew the war was over. She knew, and I knew, that Adrian's plan had backfired because he made the classic mistake of a tyrant. He thought an old woman was weak, simply because she was quiet. He forgot that we are the ones who wrote the history he was trying to erase. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'm really curious to know where you folks are tuning in from. So please drop a comment below and share your thoughts. I read every single one of them. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more about how we fight back, make sure to subscribe to Grandma's Family Diary, smash that like button, and hit the hype button to help this video reach more people who might need to hear this message. Stay strong, everyone.